All right, costuming friends, welcome to Cocktails and Costuming. I'm Gigi, and my obsessions are all things Italy, basically, and historical costuming. Today I'm interviewing a kindred spirit, Amber, from DSA Threads. Before we get into the interview, I just want to give a few house rules. First, this is a no judgment zone, so we may get a little judgy, but it won't be about someone's clothing. And two, spread the love. So if you know someone that you would like me to interview, please reach out to me and let me know who they are, and I can contact them and set up an interview. So let's get into our sip and chat.
Hi.
Hi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Amber, and I have DSA Threads, which is my company. I make reproduction lace with my embroider machine, and then I also recreate costumes from mostly late period Italian Renaissance, so 1540 till like 1590 is kind of what I like to do.
So what are we drinking today?
I'm drinking prosecco, and it's funny because I actually looked up prosecco, and the first thing that came up, the history of prosecco, and the first thing that came up was an article from La Belladonna History. And so I never knew why I liked this so much, but I guess it fits into the time period because your article talks about it first being mentioned, I believe, in 1593. Was that correct? As like the drink of Italy. And who couldn't like it? I mean, it's all bubbly and awesome.
I also love Prosecco, and I wrote an article about it. That's how much I love it, because I wanted to justify my obsession with bringing a case of Prosecco to Gulf Wars. So what project are we going to discuss today?
Well, I thought I would talk a little bit about the, I am doing the Realm of Venus competition, which is the IRCC 10, and I hope I can get this description correct, because I always forget what IRCC exactly stands for. I believe it's International Renaissance Costume Competition.
Isn't it? Or is it Italian Renaissance?
Italian, that's it. Not Italian.
Okay.
It just happens to be international, which is actually kind of because everybody from around the world participates. So this year is the 10th year anniversary, so they are doing 10 months. It's usually less time than that. And so we have to do one item every month. Yeah, so far, I think I've made 8 things. Yeah. It's been kind of nice this time because we have time to really spend on like one thing a month if we want to. So I've made a veil. I've made a skirt, an underskirt, an imbusto, which is a fitted bodice thing for underneath other garments. I think I mentioned shoes, right? Did I mention turn shoes? A pocket, and a lace Camicia. So I got to use some of the lace that I usually make for my business in that, which was really neat. It was neat to incorporate it into the actual neckline with hand techniques because it's just really, I always think it's really cool when I can take modern technology and like sandwich it with old stuff to kind of bring it back to life. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to do with every project that I am doing for this. It's the portrait that I'm recreating is the portrait of a lady by a follower of Bronzino, and the date is roughly 1575 to 1585. And so, yeah, so the first thing I did when I was looking at that portrait was like, okay, first of all, I chose the portrait because there's a lot of trim in it. And I like a challenge. I looked at it and I was like, I really want to make those things with my computer if I can. And so for everything that I'm making, mostly, not everything, I've been trying to use as much of my digitizing abilities to be able to put that into the projects that I'm making.
Okay, so we've got a couple of actual photos of your work. Some of your past projects include this amazing blue, is it called a Vesta, I think? Late 16th century, oh, the beautiful like ruff. And then you've got a pink dress that looks more Eleanor di Toledo style.
Yeah, that's actually a recreation of her portrait from, I believe, 1543-ish. So yeah, that was my last IRCC project, actually.
Oh, wow. So, and this picture was taken where? It looks very Italian. It looks like,
It's
it looks
actually
like
at
you're in
a,
Italy.
yeah, it's a Spanish monastery that they took from Spain, and they moved it brick by brick or stone by stone to, of all places, North Miami. Um, that's where I was living back when I finished that project. And so it just happened there was an SEA event that day, and they were doing some kind of dance lesson. And so I went dressed up and was able to get pictures there. That's like those are my favorite pictures of all time, because I'm actually in a setting that makes sense.
Okay, and then I think we have a couple of other photographs of the pieces that you're working on for IRCC this year. So to start, we have the portrait by Bronzino, that is your inspiration portrait. And then we've got a picture of you in this beautiful partlet that, I mean, I've seen some of the process pictures. So if you go to her Instagram, she has some process pictures for this partlet. It's beautiful. And I think it fits like the feeling of the painting perfectly.
Partlet is really
Tell me a little bit about the partlet and the steps you went through to make it.
So the interesting thing about the partlet is that it is kind of, it's one of those things where I didn't really know how they would have made it. So I just sort of tried to make what I saw. And in my last project, I had something similar where I was basically I had no idea how it was made. So I just went ahead and tried something. And I think sometimes people call that like experimental archaeology, or whatever you call it. So like for the last challenge, it was a Reta, a hairnet. Yeah, so for this one, I suppose there are different ways that the partlet could have gone, like how they could have made it. We do know that they had like very, very fine material that could have possibly been or read as see-through. So there is the possibility that the partlet is actually just a pattern stitched onto a very fine, almost see-through material. But for me, I kind of wanted to see if I could turn it into something that was like a freestanding structure of its own, kind of like lace. And since I had been working with lace and working on sort of researching the different ways that people made like bobbin lace and stuff like that, which is something else that I'm trying to move into, is not just needle lace, but bobbin lace, which is a totally different animal. And and so with bobbin lace especially, there's a lot of creating almost a woven effect, especially at the bands on the bottom sometimes. And so I just had this idea. I was like, okay, well, this is kind of weird, but like I have this big hoop. I have this 8x12 hoop. Why don't I try actually, draping the shape of the partlet in fabric, taking a picture of it, putting it into, my computer, measuring it out, making sure that it's the right size, and then just digitizing lines of thread that crisscross with each other and try to get this kind of pattern. And I had no idea if it was gonna work. Like, I just, I stitched it out on the stabilizer, and the first thing that happens when you put it into the water, especially with the stabilizer, if it's not very like heavily stitched stuff, it starts to shrink. And so when I put it in the water, I was like, no, it's all gone. There it goes. It's not gonna work. But then I found that when all of the stabilizer had like melted away, that I could actually stretch it back into the formation that it needed to be. And then I, pinned it down to my ironing board and then let it dry that way. And the cool thing about water-soluble stabilizer is it kind of acts like starch, so that if you leave the lace in the water just long enough for the water-soluble stabilizer to dissolve, like disappear, but it's still a little tacky, it'll actually stay on there and act as a stiffener. And so the cool thing about it was that when it dried, it's actually stiff enough that like it holds its own and kind of acts like a fabric. So I was really excited that that actually worked out.
And then that picture of you sitting down that shows your Saccocia, your pocket, and also is that the imbusto that you're wearing, the bodice?
Yeah, yeah, those are all of the, I've tried to wear all of the things that I had already made in one picture.
Okay, and did you make that petticoat for the challenge too?
Yeah.
Okay, and the Camicia?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so I mean, lovely. And then so I guess what we don't see in that picture is the Bracha, which are the underwear that have lace on the bottom and a nice embroidered trim. And so for the Bracha, did you do the band? Did you base that on historical examples, or do you have your own favorite embroidery that you chose from?
Oh, do you mean the black work embroidery that was on the
Yes,
bottom?
the band
Yeah.
on.
So most of my stuff I get from model books, and I do have to do a shout out to Hastings Sanderson, because she's the whole reason why my business exists. Because Model Book Muse basically has an entire list of all of the model books with they're essentially like design books from the time with all the different patterns people use to make their lace. And actually, the embroidered dogs are in there. I wish I could tell you which book they're from, but I look at
No,
so
but
many
now that I'm
books.
like looking closer, I can see they are dogs. Oh, that's great. I love it.
Yeah, they're chasing chickens, I believe, or some kind of bird, maybe a pheasant.
That's like my favorite piece that you've done so far. I like the black work and I love the lace. So can you tell me a little bit about the methods, the process you use to make some of these items, some of your favorite items?
Um, yeah, I would say that my process is pretty much the same no matter what the project is. I usually like to reproduce portraits exactly, just because I'm not quite at that level of comfort yet with all of the research and the knowledge to just be able to create something out of my mind that's going to reflect, the silhouette and the period well. And so I kind of feel like every time I go in and try to recreate a portrait, I'm getting as much information and research as I possibly can. And I'm able to actually like use the portrait to make sure that I'm on the right track. So my process is usually I look at the portrait, I try to figure out what the trims are going to be, what the layers are going to be. So not just the layers that I can see in the portrait, but the supportive layers that are going to create that shape. And then I spend a lot of time asking people who do the research for a living, like lots of like the people who are 100% obsessed with this. I use the Modern Maker a lot for drafting using the Bara method. I look at the Tudor Tailor as well, just because they've done so much research, and it's relatable to the Italian stuff as well. I look at, originally I would look at like bloggers, especially like Morgan Donner, Couture Courtesan, and there's all kinds of laurels in the SEA who are just so knowledgeable. And so that's what I mean when I say I've been like asking people who know a lot.
So
agree.
So would you recommend these as some blogs for maybe newcomers to get into who want to make some similar items? You mentioned Morgan Donner, you mentioned the Modern Maker.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Definitely check those out. So I usually go to those places first just to look at what the shapes are that people would use back then for, you know, cutting out everything, just making sure that I'm getting all of the right information I need to get the layers correct. And then most of my work is done by hand, except for the machine-made stuff.
Handwork scares me. It just seems like you have to be so perfect to get it to look good.
Yeah. So I used to be big into using the machine all the time. And when I started trying to do the hand stuff, I actually found that I ended up having more control with what it is that I got as the end result. Because I think sometimes with the machines, it can just, it's very easy for it to just keep going and you're like, wait, stop, you know? And I think sometimes when you can actually hold it with your hands, like there's definitely limitations to being able to produce things from back then using a machine, like the corners on things and getting the right miter or whatever on stuff. So yeah, I didn't think I was gonna be sold on doing handwork, but I really am now. Except for in the case of doing like embroidery and trim and lace, because I'm such a beginner and the skill sets on those are just so high that I would rather have the finished product sooner than later and not have to be working on it for a year when I don't have that time right now for this competition anyway.
So when it comes to our viewers looking for you on social media, where's the best places to find you?
I'm everywhere.
Even on Facebook? Because some people are like, I'm everywhere except Facebook, or I'm everywhere except for. So
Yeah.
what are your handles? How do we find you?
Okay, well, I'm DSA Threads just about everywhere. I'm DSA Threads on Facebook. I am DSA Threads on YouTube. I just started a channel on YouTube. Instagram, DSA Threads too, because something happened to the first one and it just went away. Can't get it back. So yeah, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I don't know why, but I'm not on Twitter. What would you do with costuming on Twitter anyway?
I don't know. I have a Twitter, but I never use it. And you also sell on Etsy, right?
Yes, and then I have Etsy and my blog is dsathreads.net.
Okay, so we'll make sure to put all those below. So you can just click on the links to follow Amber. So I guess we're at the end of our show. I didn't even get to finish my drink. Hold on, let me take another sip.
I know, I feel like that was kind of short.
And so what do you have left to make then?
So my next project is a doublet. So I have a doublet to make, and then I have a decorative underskirt that's actually going to be seen. So the one that I made is just for fun. I don't know. The underskirt that's made out of silk that I've already made is not really gonna be seen unless I pick up my skirts. So this next one is gonna be like a gold brocade kind of embroidered thing, and then so that pairs with the doublet, and then hopefully I'm gonna be able to lace those two together. And then I have a what we see in the portrait mostly is the half-fitted gown, which has all kinds of embroidery and pearls, and it's purple. It's like a dusty purple.
Yeah, I'm looking at the gown right now, and it is a beautiful dusty purple, and there is embroidery. It's really a fine piece of work. Are you going to go for the cleavage showing too? Like, it's so weird that in the portrait they show like cleavage behind the Camicia band.
Yeah, and it almost doesn't look like it's quite in the right place.
I know,
And
right?
there's actually a lot of, so when you go to the National Gallery, they actually talk about the fact that it's by a follower of Bronzino, and so it could just have been a student who was just practicing, and it's debatable whether or not this lady even ever existed. So like, maybe that person was just practicing painting that.
Maybe.
I'm not sure if I'm gonna go for that. We'll have to see. Maybe I'll do like one shot where I'm like, hey.
Okay.
Because we don't take ourselves too seriously around here.
No, apparently not. I mean, you know, and that's one thing that I liked about meeting you was the work you do is so like beautiful and fine and like detailed, and you've been in the costuming world for a long time. You even did summer stock way back when, right? So like, you know what you're doing, but you're still very like easy to talk to, even for like a beginner historical costumer like me. Like, a lot of things that I've studied are more along how women lived and what life was like for them, and not necessarily making what they wore. So when I talk to you about making things, you're very like kind about my limited knowledge, and you're a lot of fun to talk to. So
Well,
it was
thank
great to
you.
have you. You're welcome. It was great to have you come here and talk a little bit about what you're working on. And since we're at the end of our show, I just really want to ask that you hit the subscribe button if you like what you saw. And that way you can get notified of all the upcoming content on La Belladonna. Also, please give it a thumbs up if you liked my conversation with Amber today. Follow her on DSA Threads too on Instagram and all the other cool handles that she has listed below. She also has a blog and a YouTube channel. So show her some love. Thank you for being here with us. Stay safe out there and be excellent to each other.